Okay, hello, wherever you are. Hopefully now out in the big wide world rather than locked up in your kitchens, bathrooms, wherever it is you've been watching, hopefully, this UniFrance series, where we've been trying to look at the new realities for film from a whole series of directions. During this period, we've looked at sales, we've looked at marketing, we've looked at distribution, we've looked at new business models. We had a look at a particular genre in animation to understand how that was progressing. We've looked at some of those public institutions that are going to be so critical to the next stage of recovery. And we even had a look at the diversity and the Oscars. And now perhaps this is the full circle where this series began with cinemas closing down. And now, happily, we are at the very least looking at mechanisms for opening up. Lots has been discussed during the period. It's interesting we call this new realities because those realities have changed every week. So 6 weeks ago, realities looked quite different than they do today. But I think the theme that's been running through this, and it'll be interesting to see how our panel reacts, is that in lots of ways, a lot of trends have been going through, have been continuing rather than this sudden cutoff where everything new began, the whole paradigm shifted, as they like to say. But rather there were trends that were already existing that were exposed, accentuated, and to an extent accelerated by the coronavirus lockdown. Cinema has perhaps got more of has a different perspective than that, in as much as cinema had that enforced closure. Things had to stop. But how they now react and how they now reopen, I think, is going to be fascinating. And what they've learned during that period and how that might be useful moving forward is going to be the key theme of this session. We've got a fantastic group of people that I think are going to help us think through and talk about their own experiences and perhaps give us some new perspectives. So we'll start with Florence Almozini from the Lincoln Center, film at Lincoln Center in New York, a senior programmer, and one of those extremely prestigious institutions, I think, that has been so critical to European film making its mark in the US, and obviously an organization which runs key festivals that are so essential, I think, again, to meeting those global audiences. We have Ted Mundorf, who's the COO and president of ArcLight and Pacific. And since 2002, ArcLight has become perhaps some of the most prestigious and best known institutions of cinemas in the US. Perhaps ArcLight Hollywood being the one that everyone knows, but actually with cinemas all over the US. We have Jane Shaw. Hello, and she's president of Lumiere Pavilions, which was the CineAsia Exhibitor of the Year in 2019, before all this closure. And Lumiere, I think, have been very important in the development of cinemas across China, which is obviously one of the big stories in the pre-coronavirus period. We have Nathaniel Karmitz, who's the CEO of MK2, the biggest of the art house networks in France, with again major art house cinemas in Spain too, and a company with broader interests across the value chain too. Kim van der Werf is from Focus Arnhem, one of the art house cinema, the local art house cinema is so important for us to understand and discuss here, because they're the ones that are actually within their communities. They're the ones who bring cinema directly to those individuals in places like Arnhem, where that kind of content is so essential to the culture of the place. Focus Arnhem are part of Europa Cinemas, and I don't think it's always understood, but the amalgamation, the totality of that network, all those different cinemas make up sometimes between half and 100% of the diverse film output of Europe. So we've got a big group of people that I think will have lots of different perspectives. Maybe we could start with you, Florence. There was quite a lot of optimism, I think, was coming out of the discussions with people from the US, particularly where they'd been working with on-demand platforms. But let's kick off, as I'm going to kick off with all of you. Just start, just run us through what happened to you when the shutdown happened. When did that happen? How did it happen? And what was the immediate response?
Okay, so thank you so much for being listening to this. My experience was pretty interesting because I'm currently based in France, but I work for Film at Lincoln Center in New York, and I was traveling back for annual rendezvous with French cinema, which is in March and one of our biggest and most prestigious festival. And just as I landed, I got a note from UniFrance that the delegation could not travel and join us for the festival. So it was just pretty much me and Adeline, who's based in New York. So it was a little, you know, as everybody experienced, it was a kind of unsettling at the beginning because while we knew about it and we knew the pandemic was developing, everything that would happen every day was a surprise and nobody knew how to handle it and how long it was going to last. We were making too much of a big deal out of it. So we ended up starting the festival with a record attendance, I have to say, and it was early March. And we closed the cinema on March 12th. So we were 2/3 into the festival. We had no talent, but full audience. We had a few guests who were already in New York, and the Q&A were very well attended. We just opened Baccarat. We also had the director from Brazil there. So it was still an exciting time. And we had to close on March 12th because it was state regulation. Then we didn't really know how long we were going to be closed, what would happen. And we decided to see if we could reschedule rendezvous because some screenings could not be projected. And we ended up going online straight away for that. We partner with Festival Scope, which is a pretty well-known platform. And we negotiated with each sale agent and distributors if we could program the film. We were not able to play theatrically, virtually, and we, for free for members, audience in general. So that raised right away the question of geo-blocking. What do you do virtual? What do you want to preserve for theatrical experience? Are you killing yourself by going virtual right away, or are you not fulfilling expectation for your audience and your members? And there was not a lot of time to think about this because we had to be very active and keep our audience interested and keep New York cultively alive too. And so we did, that's one thing we did. And then we got a lot of requests from distributors in New York and in the US to play titles virtually. Same thing, we were not sure if it was the right thing to do for our theater because that's our raison d'etre. And we ended up doing one by one. We played Baccarat, that was already opened. We played The Whistler. We played a few films. We decided to just play films that would matter to us as a curatorial voice, not to take everything that was open, but just something that made sense for people who follow us in New York and maybe in the US or outside. So we ended up being very, very busy because we did over 20 theatrical releases, not theatrical, virtual releases, and rescheduling a lot of festivals. So, I will talk more, but there was not much time to think and reflect. It was just action right away. It was also fulfilling for us to experience all this and overcome challenges so quickly.
So you had an infrastructure that was already in place that you could actually switch to straight away. I mean, it's interesting, quite rough for this to happen right in the middle of a festival. But I mean, one of the good things seems to be that there was already an available service that you could partner with immediately. I just wondered whether there was anything that you think came out of that experience while you were doing it that you could see becoming part of the festival going forward. Was there anything about that virtual that you saw as virtuous?
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, I love cinema in general, so I was very dubitative in terms of like going into virtual worlds. But it's interesting. The best part of it is being able to do Q&A and communication with people who are not in your time zone or cannot travel, because it's not that complicated. Even so, you know, there's challenges in terms of how the conversation is flowing. But it was a good thing to do. We did a lot of like different conversation and Q&As with guests all around. And it's also nice to see that people who maybe not be able to come to your cinema, maybe people who are like based in a different country or not your targeted audience, could join your conversation, because these conversations are usually free and they're not that difficult to find on YouTube or other like platform. So this was actually a nice surprise for me. I mean, and I also watched a lot of other Q&As that otherwise I would not been able to see them. So I did like that. I think I enjoyed watching some links, thinking about how people could see it virtually, not on the screen, because it gave me some thoughts about what do you get out of watching a movie, and why do you watch a movie if you're not in the cinema, you know. So that was not, I mean, I think the challenge was actually pretty interesting. And if you're creative, it's actually, it wasn't that bad, I think, for us. We also have a lot of connections. So even so we didn't have our own platform, we were able to quickly work with other distributors or other like VOD platform in terms of where do we put our content? How do we exchange all the information and the content we have from our past festivals and releases, and how do we share it? And that was also semi-positive.
Semi-positive, I like that. There's a couple of big themes, because I'm going to go around everyone in this opening thing talking about what there was. I think a couple of big points there, I think, have been raised that we'll come back to, if we may. One is audience time. Clearly, there was a lot more audience time during the last few months than would normally be the case. And the second thing is the availability of films. I think is going to be an issue when we talk about the next steps. That films that were available for you to show virtually this time, distributors may be less enthusiastic about showing online at other times. So we'll come back to those if we may. Let's move to you, Nathaniel. Again, let's start with the background. When did the shutdown begin for you?
Well, for us, we were both in France and Spain, and it was not funny, but the interesting part is that everything happened 72 hours before in Spain than in France. So we had a kind of a European sense of first Italy, after Spain, after France. Everything was quite quick because each time it was a 24-hour notice to shut down. When even some in France it was less, it was at 8 for the evening. So everything closed. In Europe, and at least in France, the support measure from the government were very quickly announced. So this was a first relief, especially on the chômage partiel paying people, even if they don't work. And our first goal was to cut the expenses. So landlords in priority, and try to minimize the losses during this period of shutdown. After the first shock of how we're going to do what's going on, also very much linked to the what we're learning about the pandemic and how it will go, and this was changing every week. So we had at first some difficulties to project ourselves in what's going to happen and how long it will last, but we decided to have some initiatives very different of what had happened in many territories. Our first wish was to say, a lot of brands in every sectors wanted to stay in touch. Our point was not to try to stay in touch; it was to question the idea that cinema is in the daily life of our clients and cinema lovers. And what we wanted was to stay in the daily life of our customers. So we have the chance of having a review named Trois Couleurs. So we launched a Festival à la Maison, a movie home festival, where we gave tips 4 times a day, every day, on what to do, what to watch, where to watch, good things and interesting movies. And very quickly, we launched 2 different new initiatives. First one was named Enquête de Curiosity, and it was a free weekly VOD platform where we put 5 programs every week. Usually, it was one feature movie, 1 documentary, and 3 strange things. And it was the idea was to show strange, rare, bizarre things of the cinema history. For this, we used mostly our library. This initiative worked tremendously well, so we're now continuing, even if we reopen this initiative on a weekly basis. And also, we've launched a short movie confined contest festival, and it worked amazingly well. We received 650 shorts from all genre, very good quality, and we've selected 10 of them that we're now showing online and also in our cinema as a pre-show for the reopening. So to give a big and quick
where
outlook.
can we see these films? They sound fun.
You can go on troiscouleurs.fr.
Okay,
or you go through mk2.com.
If we can get the Zoom panel out of the way, I will definitely be there quickly. So there's a couple of things here, and I think you rightly draw a distinction here. So first of all, there's the business of cinema, and then there's the audience relationships of cinema. So in terms of the business, the French government acted pretty quickly to come in. The furloughing of staff, the payment of staff during that period did that allow you some confidence as a business that you could survive this period?
For us, yes. At least it allowed us the idea of not being for too long time in a big question regarding the people and the staff, which I think is a big question, especially in Europe, because this is a tricky part, and so it allowed us to focus on the right challenge. First, to pay the distributors, pay people, and after you had a lot of systems in place where you don't know what will be the outcome, but you feel supported and you feel that if there is a big problem, you won't be the first in the world to fall down. After, it's the quality of France, and it's also it's constrained in the rebound. It's because we go in a crisis less slow, and we go up also slowly. But it was I think it was a relief to know that the support was here and very quickly. For example, in Spain, we had for 1 month we didn't knew what would happen with the staff. So landlord discussions were very hard and harsh. So we had the 2 situations, but obviously we think reopening is more difficult than closing. In any way.
And the thing I want to, this is very much a 2-part discussion. So there's what we learned when we were closed. I think the economics and the market realities of reopening is what we'll come to next. It's a really useful piece of insight though, that during that shutdown you did have that support, so it was some of that fear factor of closure was taken out. But the more important thing in some ways is that you use that moment in time to actually build strong engagement with audiences, to build a theme really that this is part of your life, that we're part of your life. You insinuate the notion of cinema and brand so that when they're looking forward to coming back, you've lined them up, haven't you? That's the key thing. I'm going to move to Kim, if I may. I'm going to come back to you on reopening in a moment, but Kim, you know, as a cinema like yours in a place like Arnhem, first of all, did you get that same level of support straight away? And was that at national level, European level, local level? How did you just give us an insight into the business of the shutdown?
Well, we at the beginning there was very fast a salary compensation, and it was nationwide, and it was for all companies who were facing a loss of at least 20% of their income. And recently there is this also nationwide a matching fund in which the national government is granting an amount of aid, and that is matched by the local and provincial authorities. And then, of course, we have support from Europa Cinemas. And so we had it on 3 different levels.
So did you feel safe during that period? Did it feel like a degree of relief that allowed you to concentrate on other things, that the economics was not going to be the immediate problem?
Yeah, sure. The salary support was, of course, very, very good, because when we closed down, it was on, which is quite ominous, on Friday, the 13th of March. And it was so astonishing. And then we thought, well, what will the near future look like? And knowing that we could pay the salaries is, of course, a big relief. And then this matching fund of the, which is realized by the Film Fund. The matching fund is, of course, a recognition of this unique network of art house cinemas in the Netherlands. We have a very good, strong network, and that's a recognition of the importance of it.
And so, you know, in terms of keeping the audience during that period, again, the Netherlands is a place that I think in some ways tends to be ahead of the game in terms of that digital engagement. But what did you do during that period?
Well, the very first weekday, we became a member of the VOD platform Pickle. And that's, I think it's not a regular platform, but it's like a collaboration between the organization of Pickle, the distributors, and a growing number of art house cinemas. And then what we did was we went into full communication mode with our audiences. So we started sending newsletters about the closure, and then sending newsletters about that we were moving our activities online, partly, of course. And the Pickle is offering a very nice collection of art house, very new art house movies and classics, and some festival content. So, and the nice thing of Pickle is that when you watch a film through Pickle, you support your favorite cinema as well. So that's a very good system, I guess.
And that's Pickle, that's PICL, isn't it? That's a, yeah. And that's been around for a couple of years, but I know they're enthusiastic art house fans as well. Yeah. And again, I think when we come back to discuss this, I think that the potential and possibility of bringing together the digital and the physical experience may be something that perhaps gives us some opportunities going forward. That's great, Kim. I'm going to come to you on reopening because I know that's the next discussion. Ted, if we can come to you. Just first of all, let's go back to the beginning. When did you find out, and what did you do, and how did that work?
Well, under the category of optimist, when South by Southwest was canceled, I looked at it as an opportunity. A friend of mine that was a director they did an article about him and how his film's now not going to get theatrical. So I called him. I said, "We'll make theatrical happen." And then I spoke to the different agencies offering up ArcLight to, host basically a version of South by Southwest in Los Angeles, which would get some acquisition folks excited, et cetera. So that optimism went away in about 3 days with the announcement of the closings. And we had adjusted the seating. Fortunately, we have reserved seating throughout our circuit, so we were able to adjust and create social distancing. That again lasted 3 or 4 days total, and then we had the government mandated shutdown. So at that point, we furloughed 1,100 folks, and which means they are not going to get paid. But we felt it was important not to get too into the weeds here, but to keep medical going, which we are still, which is important in the United States. It's important everywhere, but I'm just saying the United States has its own issues on the medical side. So, so we continued with those folks to be on furlough, and I'm sure we'll talk about them later. And so then after we shut down completely, then we furloughed our home office, and keeping a small team available to literally to shut down theaters wasn't easy. It took us about 8 days to do the things needed to do, get rid of food and bleed lines, but still we need to maintain equipment. So we're still have a small group that is doing that. Did that answer it, Michael?
Yeah, that's a pretty big. That's a pretty full answer, and I think it's quite important to contrast. In Europe, that safety net, that government response that would kick into action quickly, and that's simply not available in the States in the same way. Again, how did you keep the relationships, or how have you been keeping those relationships with audiences? And it's a different thing when you're a national chain like like ArcLight.
Well, we and yet just to follow up on your comment regarding the the safety net that we have, National Association of Theater Owners was very helpful in helping people in need who were financially distressed to get them some relief. And they did a great job, and are still doing a great job. And there was certainly government assistance, national government assistance throughout the country, helping some folks. Or helping anybody who was furloughed. We jumped on the virtual bandwagon pretty quickly, and we. And I know in your first of these series, you talked about Kino Lorber and Neon, and branding. So we branded with them some of their virtual streaming right away, and we did a virtual Q&A this last weekend. So we continue to try to engage that way. But the most unusual thing that we did is, back in the day, Pacific Theaters was the largest drive-in circuit in the country. And Pacific still has one remaining drive-in in the circuit. So when that reopened a couple of weeks ago, because we were able to open outdoor theaters prior to indoor theaters, we took the ArcLight brand and did a ArcLight night at the drive-ins. And it's not in the center of town. It's a little bit of a drive east of Los Angeles to where our core audience would be, either on the west side or in the Hollywood area, for those of you who know Los Angeles. And this is out east, and we filled up. So we're maximum capacity because we have to social distance cars too. Was about 600, almost 700 cars, and we literally sold out for that. So we have continued to, engage, and it also shows the appetite that people still want to get out.
Yeah, I liked the. I was reading about your drive-in. It's a bit of a Back to the Future response to the pandemic, but I think what's coming out with the pickle discussion and with Festival Scope and with us is partnering with digital channels and allowing your brand to still run alongside those and to actually share. And it seems to have been quite an important part for lots of the cinemas to the response that's going to lead to recovery. Excellent. So let me move to Jane. We'll come back to you on reopening in a moment. But Jane, as I was saying at the beginning, China, the growth in China, the big success of Chinese cinemas, in which I know you were actively involved, had been running for some time. So first of all, just tell us how coronavirus affected your cinemas, and perhaps give us a bit of a time scale when it happened, how long it lasted. Sorry, you'll need to switch your microphone on. It should be. There we go.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I guess our cinemas are the first to be closed, right? So actually, it happened on January 23rd, literally the day before Chinese New Year. We were actually quite busy selling tickets, pre-sale tickets for the 7-day Chinese New Year festival, which is supposed to be one of the biggest festival in our life. And obviously what happened in Wuhan started to alarm people. And all our cinemas received requirement from the local government to shut down. And obviously around that time, we didn't expect that it could last such a long time. We have 40 cinemas, over 330 screens all over the country, 26 cities. Obviously, it's quite there are quite a lot of difficulties coordinating all the efforts. And we do have a cinema in Wuhan. So obviously we have a lot of concerns with the local staff there. And thank God there's there's no one staff ever affected. And we actually keep tracking every staff during the pandemic every day, make sure that we have a visibility of them, we know where they are safe, and they're with their family. And obviously we do everything else. We do a lot of stuff like everybody else. We maintain the equipment, the venue, we negotiated with our partners, landlords, apply subsidies from governments, and we actually very proactively engage with our audience. We have 1.5 million members, registered members with us in our system. So we proactively reach out with them through our social media, WeChat, Weibo, TikTok, a lot of programs try to be interactive with them. We had partnership with a lot of streaming companies, so we organized and sponsored some of these virtual online festivals with embassies such as Israeli embassies, Canadian embassies. Some of our festivals, unfortunately, were postponed, such as French Panorama, as well as Beijing International Film Festival. We don't know whether we can bring them back in second half of this year. Hopefully we can. And we do have a schedule, a lineup of festivals for the second half of this year, such as Canadian drama festival from national theaters, and Switzerland, the EU festival, so forth. So hopefully we are still closed for this moment, and we hope that we'll be able to open very soon.
So all of your cinemas are closed at the moment? Yeah,
unfortunately.
So does at the stage you're at now, because as I say, we're going to come on to reopening in a moment, but does it feel to you like it's been a halt, a disappointing stop? You can get back into the same trend you were in before. You can feel that progress just coming back after this, or does it feel like something may have been lost during this period?
Well, obviously, this is a challenging time, I guess. Unfortunately, fortunately, we have enjoyed 10-year fast growth in China in terms of the cinema industry. We grow from 3,000 cinema nationwide to 60,000 screens nationwide in less than, I think, around 12 years. This is tremendous achievement. This pandemic obviously, unfortunately, put a stop of this, but we think that we will resume back on track soon, hopefully, with support from the distributors, the producers. And I think, I do believe that cinema is a social experience. This is not something like online streaming, virtual games, entertainment will be able to replace. And we do have that kind of a demand from audience, from our members, yearning for the opening of the cinemas. So I do think there's a big chance for us to put the business back to track if we had a chance to reopen the cinema. One of the successful reopening experience actually is from Hong Kong. Hong Kong cinemas were closed for about 5-6 weeks, and they were open in early May and gradually back on track. Actually, they started with a cap on 50% occupancy rate, but today we actually got the good news because of the audience the cinema started to be occupied by the audience. So the government actually lifted the cap from 50% to 80% starting from next Tuesday, which is a tremendous progress to us.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you on the reopening, but that's a very concrete look at what's been happening. Let me come to Nathaniel, if I may, first. The period of lockdown, as we've heard from everyone here, I think two things happened in general. There has been support from all of you of various sorts to ensure that there's not an immediate economic collapse. And the second thing is that there's been a high level of kind of entrepreneurialism, adaptability, partnerships with VOD. All of that, I understand that's what got us through the lockdown. The reopening is where a lot of people are suggesting there is real room for concern for a number of reasons. There is that level of support's not going to be there anymore. There's concerns, and I'd like to make sure we do talk about this, that distributors, the availability of film and so on, we're part of an extended value chain that's clearly going to be critical here. First of all, Nathaniel, tell me just the basics of your reopening, where you have reopened and where you are going to reopen.
Well, two things. For France, it reopened last Monday. Yeah. And it was a coordinated reopening of all the cinemas, most of the cinemas in France, which was a wish from all the cinema. It was announced 3 weeks before, and to say we all open together. It's been very different from places to places because all the cinemas reopened, but some of them only for 2 screenings or 3 screenings starting at 4 o'clock. We decided at MK2 to open normally, so starting at 9 in the morning and with the 10 p.m. show. It was a very unusual reopening because it was on a Monday, as usually we open movies on Wednesdays. It was super sunny and 35 degrees. It was the first day of school, and we had a weekend of city elections. So it's also a whole global combination of what you can do worse in terms of reopening, but and we had a very few also new movies, just maybe 8. So it was we were all very happy. We saw that all the illimity card people were back there, very enthusiastic, but the offer and the context is not still here. We still feel that it might be some fear of getting inside show, but I think this is not the main, maybe not the main point. The real point is the offer. We open also back like Friday in Spain. Same thing, most of the cinema in Spain, but not all of them, with a context where you see the difference, because France is the world capital and Paris the world capital of cinema. So we had a very diverse type of cinema. We have a lot of French cinema. We know we have a lot of French cinema and arthouse movies coming in. So we know that the miss of the summer US blockbusters will be there, but we'll go through and we'll make the numbers that we will limit the losses in a way. What we see in Spain is that there's no very less local market on Spanish movies, less distributors. So everyone is expecting this US movies, and the change of dates from because everyone started saying, okay, it's starting in July, so we open 2 weeks before, so we give confidence to people, and after to come back. This change is really problematic and putting the whole system in Spain in trouble, because it's just 1 month of losses in front of us. So we have 2 concrete and different situations where it's maybe a thing for the future for some territories. You need to have a strong local market to be able to live without the US and without expecting anything from the US. So these are the 2 reality of our reopening. We believe, and what we think is that it's gonna be gradually. It's gonna take a few weeks, and our thoughts is to say all along July it will be more and more people, and hopefully we'll forget a little bit about this pandemic and live with it and learn to live with it, and we'll find new real back to the old life numbers during August and in September.
But you are relying on that being true. Yeah, particularly in Spain, it sounds like you've got to be certain that there must come a point where it's not sustainable. But you're confident at the moment that those customers are coming back in the adequate number.
For example, in Spain, the real problem is offer. You don't have, in France, we know that starting next week, we'll have some big French comedy coming in. Will not be a normal blockbuster summer, but we have products, and we'll have 10 to 15 movies every week from all different kind of movies all over the world, all genre. So we know we have movies to work with and to convince our audience to come back. In Spain, we have a few arthouse movies, but the audience is not developed as in France or in Netherlands. But we need, you don't have any big Spanish release for the summer that was planned. So we really need these US movies, and I think it will be the reality for Italy and some other big territories for cinema. And so there we felt trouble can come quick because we're in a good financial shape. But if you were just in between before and you have to start again to pay your rent and people and the subsidies are going down, it can last a few weeks. But for many people, these few weeks will be worse than the 4 months of closure.
And do you think that, just really quickly, the distributors are clearly critical in this as well? Do you think that the state of distribution is a critical issue for you too?
It is, and it's here we see that we are in a globalized economy, also for movies. We were asked for, with confidence of the US distributor and the majors, that July was a month. So Europe at least planned a reopening for July and tried to organize themselves to match the expectations of these majors. And at the end, US problems, US decision, worldwide impact. So we're all looking at the US and China, because we're expecting China for Mulan, because it's the US and China, and we're the Europeans, we're in the middle.
Ted, perhaps come to you. That was a very honest assessment, I think, of the differences between countries here and the reliance on certain amounts of content being there for the reopening. First of all, just give us how reopening has worked, is working, will work for you.
Well, we're going to be slow. To the point of product being available is one reason. We still are negotiating with landlords, be another reason. Third reason is we're definitely spiking as far as the bed. So our hospitals are at their highest occupancy, et cetera, currently. And so unfortunately, Nathaniel, I don't think the movement of product has stopped from the US. Cinemark, which is one of the larger chains here, just announced during this session, they've moved everything back. So it's the description in the article I just saw was leapfrogging, and I think that's probably a pretty appropriate term. So right now we have the most significant film, Tenet, to open on August 12th. I know Warner Brothers would love to stay there, but if we keep moving back, the government keeps moving back opening dates, or the possibility of opening dates, these will continue to move. Yesterday, as an example, not in the theater world, but our Independence Day, your Bastille Day, is July 4th here, and Los Angeles County has shut all the beaches for that period of time. So we're not, from a COVID standpoint, we certainly don't believe that we're out of the woods. So as a private company, and I think the private companies will be slower to come back. The numbers, it was interesting to hear the Nathaniel's talking about the economics of opening France a little easier because of product. And we certainly have that problem in the US, and it is more expensive to open up without current product than staying closed. So, so that's an important consideration as well.
So it sounds like the uncertainty is the real killer factor in this for you at the moment. It's you can't really plan strategically when you don't know what you can show, and you don't know whether you can, exactly how you can open.
Absolutely. The thought going back to March when we started shutting down was, well, heck, we're going to be open by the end of May. And of course that didn't happen. And then it was, of course, we're going to be open for the 4th of July, and that's not going to happen. So, what I do know is it'll change tomorrow.
Yeah, of course. Just, do you have projections? I mean, obviously I'm not going to ask you to give away lots of business information here, but there does come a point where things become unsustainable. Is there a point where you absolutely have to open, or there's going to be closures, or some of the people you talked about on furlough, presumably at the moment, you're going to lose some of those people, I imagine, and people are going to find other things.
Working backwards, I don't think we're going to lose a lot of people, but I do think people are very concerned about coming back. I think the Disney learned that when they announced that they were opening their parks in the United States, and the employees went, no. So I think there's a level of that. So that preparation has to be very, not only do we need the confidence of our returning customers, but we need the confidence of our staff. So starting with that is going to be an issue. As I said, we believe that, there's a point staying closed is going to be economically better for us than reopening. So to reopen with product from last year or 6 years ago isn't sustainable. And we've watched, as certain theaters around the United States have opened, and we fortunately look at their numbers, and we know that the appetite, or at least my conclusion is, the appetite for coming back isn't there yet.
No, and that relationship with the big distributors is, it must be very tense at the moment. It must be quite difficult because you've all got your different interests, and obviously, you could just mention, the Universal's discussion or desire to open day and date. Lots of things are being thrown in that make your life more difficult.
Well, I don't think it's any more difficult than it was. I just think it's a little bit more prominent, especially in the press when Mr. Shell, announced that they're going day and date with everything for Universal. But I've spoken to a lot of distributors, U.S. distributors, in the last 48 hours, and one of them said last night, is head of one of the majors, is we're all in this together. So I think there's, depending on who you are, you may have a more, or who you work for, you may have a different look. But there is, yesterday, I really had a good conversation with this gentleman, and let's try to figure it out together. So I think that's a plus. But as I said, everything's going to change tomorrow.
Yeah, and just a one word you might not be able to tell me, but if you've got some projection of when you're looking at now, are we looking August? Are we looking September? There must be a point where it doesn't matter that you have to open. It's
I would say my guess is it's not before September 1st. Okay,
that's pretty good. Let me move over to Kim. Thanks, Ted. That's good. Kim, if I can talk to you now, obviously as a smaller art house venue, there are restrictions in terms of space, and you've got I just from your point of view, first questions first, how have you come back, and give us some idea of the reopening from your point of view?
All right. Well, after feeling really sorry for ourselves for a while, we sorted ourselves out a bit and thought, well, we have to focus on the near future. And when the government was giving some perspective on being able to open again, it was on the 1st of June. So we're open for about a month now, and we could start with 30 people in max in the larger cinema rooms, and we have 3 small rooms, and we can admit like 18 people there. So that's a rather small amount of visitors.
So what percentage do you think you're, compared to last year, do you think you're doing in terms of audiences?
Well, we're on 30% of our capacity and on 50% of when we compare it to last year.
And are there ways that you're trying to alleviate that by more hours? People have talked about staggering screenings and so on, or are you stuck with what you've got?
No, not really, because we start in the morning some days, and then but we have to program very carefully because audience are not allowed to meet in the building. We have a very careful routing, one-way routing. So it's not only the program itself, it's the physical being in our building, which is quite problematic. And so we simply could, I think we did like 25 screenings before COVID-19, and now we are doing 16 a day.
Right. And how long is for how long is that sustainable? And are you still getting support for that kind from government and other places?
Well, I think this summer there's another round of salary support, and then this film fund matching fund is there. And when there is going to be another round of virus, then I don't know what's going to happen then. And we are going to start tomorrow, the 1st of July. We're allowed to have more visitors in our cinema rooms, but for the smaller cinemas, it's not a real relief, because we're going to 41 seats, so that's not really a big help.
And are you having to turn people away, or are people? Do you get a sense that people are nervous coming?
Yes, both. Some films are quite popular, and but we have to do all the we have to sell tickets online only, so we're not communicating directly to tickets buyers. But I've noticed that some people are really cautious, because it's still well, there's still a big risk, and a lot of our audiences are elderly people, so they're at risk. And I've noticed that a lot of people got adjusted to the slower pace, you know, and not going out so much. So we have to win our audiences back. Some of them are really enthusiastic, and they're here a lot, but a lot of people are a bit slow, I guess.
Yeah, that is an issue, I think, for art house cinemas in particular, that the average age of an art house audience is quite considerably older, which makes them more at risk than some other groups, medically at least. Is there an opportunity in this at all, in as much as we're hearing about a lack of US products, and that, you know, there are some art house products still there? Do you see any advantages or opportunities in this?
I think it is a problem. You know, that distributors are keeping their goals on the shelves, and we need, as art house cinemas, we need a broad variety of, you know, the very small films, but also the bigger, easy accessible titles. We really need them to survive. And so, because we were discussing this yesterday with my colleagues, and is there a chance for us in it that, for instance, the more unknown art house cinema gets a stage right now? But it is difficult. We're still waiting for the you know, the bigger. When you look at our top 10, it's not a surprise that, for instance, Green Book is in it, and you know, the more popular titles. So we need those bigger films. Yeah.
So there are some systemic issues in this. So how long is this sustainable for? I mean, you've seen audiences coming back bit by bit, but is there a sense of confidence that you have at the moment, or are we waiting for a vaccine? What is it that's going to
We're waiting for the vaccine. The entire world is waiting for a vaccine, and but we have also difficulties in how to, you know, after being very pragmatic, we're now thinking about our identity. What are we allowed to do? What can we do with lesser funds? And we are art house cinemas. We have, I mean, we're here for a reason. We're not commercial cinema, so we have to offer in-depth programming, and a lot of time those programs often cost more than, you know, the easy accessible things. So we have to consider and reconsider all the time. Can we make this special program? Can we show these classical movies? Can we do this screening with live music, for instance. And that's what we did the last year.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's sometimes there's an image I think comes across about how cinemas as being rather sleepy, old school businesses, but actually they're nearly all run by entrepreneurial people who have to innovate to survive all of the time. So to that extent, there may be some advantages there, but there also is a point at which, you know, to keep going, you have to have a certain level, and there still seems like there's a degree of uncertainty there.
Well, what we try to do now is that now that, you know, the global village is more and more looking like a place where you don't want to be right now, we're looking more locally and then try to connect more to our local audiences and in a very personal way. And so we're, for instance, we have a very wonderful rooftop cinema, and we're going to ask the people of Arnhem, what do you want to program on this on our rooftop cinema? So we are going to get them into our programming system. Yeah,
one way or another. You sound determined anyway, Kim. So I really appreciate that. So Florence, just coming to you, first of all, how are you coming back? And I'm particularly interested, I think, as a lot of people are in Europe, about the festivals and so on. So what's your reopening strategy?
Well, unfortunately, cinemas were just moved out of phase 4 in New York. So we were hoping to open in the summer. And, you know, as Ted said, it changes every day. But I think realistically, Labor Day weekend would be feasible. This is anyway.
And sorry for us Europeans, what's Labor Day?
Oh, Labor Day. It's end of August, early September. It's a holiday weekend, so it's really the end of the summer blockbusters. But then it's the beginning of the Oscar season traditionally. So we're still planning for that weekend to maybe start theatrical. Our capacity is going to be fairly limited. We may be at 20 to 25%, which is very difficult to make money on that. But we're not for profit, so we have to start somewhere. We're mostly working with the New York Film Festival, which is our biggest festival of all year round, for late September, mid-October. So that's a lot of planning. We have to program it, but we also have to work on the logistic of what movies are available, what guests will be able to travel, what venue can we use. Lincoln Center is in a campus which is partially closed right now. We don't know if we can all our venues, and if it's 20%, we need a lot more venues to compensate, you know, the loss of capacity.
And again, that uncertainty factor is very clear there. I mean, it's a lot of festivals are opening everywhere at the moment, but you need people to come in order to create that international festival. And that sounds to me like you're still uncertain about how much you can get an audience big enough to make a festival completely viable.
I think we will get an audience. I think there's definitely a lot of requests for us to have the festival. I'm more worried about not having space for everyone. It's tricky with the older audience and with people who have to travel. But New York is such a big city. There's such a wide range of people who would want to come and usually can't get tickets. I don't think that's going to be the biggest issue. It's just finding enough venues. And in terms of like travel for guests, we will have guests from New York. A lot of filmmakers are from there and will be available. And whoever cannot come, you know, I guess we'll do more virtual Q&As. We have a lot of talent from Europe, Asia in general, or South America, and I think we'll figure it out this way. It's going to be different, but it could also allow us to like extend wherever we're not on Lincoln Center. We can go in different places and get different audiences also. So
I wonder if you recognize. Sorry. I wonder if you recognize some of what Kim was saying. Zoom is terrible, isn't it? I wonder if you recognize some of what Kim was saying, which was one of the things that perhaps will be is that that acting local and thinking global, that maybe that's where the positive comes out. Maybe we will see more of the global approach of will be online, and more of that, more of a focus on local audiences.
Absolutely. I mean, it's always great. I mean, also we are lucky to be in New York because there's so many filmmakers here, and we have a lot of talent who's there already. So we're, you know, in a very, I have to say, privileged place for that.
And just quickly, from a film's point of view, is there an opportunity here potentially for European and art house cinema to maybe look at the US market, as you know, maybe there's holes being left in the distribution of US product at the moment, or is that just wishful thinking? Florence?
Is it for me or for anyone?
Okay, I've lost you, Florence. So we'll leave that one. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, you've gone. Oh, you can hear me. Excellent.
Well, Ted has a question, I think.
Ted has a point. Ted.
Oh no, I was just gonna, if Florence wasn't coming back on, I was gonna help out on that art house side. So
yeah. Well, please.
I definitely, I think there's an interesting conundrum in the art house world, is because from a footprint standpoint, they don't usually, they don't require as many films to be in the building, because the buildings aren't as big as some of these megaplexes. But then you have the audience makeup, which is going to be, in my opinion, the slowest to come back, if they come back. And but I think Florence, to Florence's point, she's in a great position being where she is in New York. But I think there will be lots of, I don't think it's a wish, Michael. I think there'll be a lot of film available. It's just a matter of getting those folks out to see it. And even with limited capacities, I'm just very, very afraid of the art house world right now in the US.
Oh, yeah, and again, that there may be demand, but connecting audiences with content in a way that's economically viable is where the danger comes. So I'm going to finish with Jane, because Jane, in you know, China has become so essential to the economics of certainly of the big studio films from the US, but it's always seen as the growth market. It's been one of those areas of optimism. Everyone's always talking about how they can they can get into China these days. First of all, when are you reopening? Let's just start with that question, then we'll move on to the bigger issue. So tell me about how you're reopening.
Well, we are still waiting for the green lights from the government when we are going to open. Obviously, we've been trying to work together with all different government agencies to make sure, you know, we have everything in compliance, you know, in terms of a hygiene standard, or all these security issues, to make sure, you know, our staff and the audience feel safe to come back. Now I think it's all about when we're going to get the green lights. But on the other hand, I think we do see some silver lining in this situation. Obviously, in order to bring the market back, the government is being more flexible, to my perspective. In terms of content they're willing to distribute. Obviously, you know, we need all different kinds of movies, not only international blockbusters, but also domestic productions, not only art house movies, but also mainstream movies. And we even trying to bring back some old classic movies like Harry Potter. You know, we are actually working with Universal Studios, who's building one of the largest theme parks in Beijing, 4 square kilometers to be opened into sometime next year. We're going to operate their cinema there. And obviously, they're going to introduce Harry Potter, Kung Fu Panda, all different kinds of theme parks to the young audiences. So we think it's a brilliant idea if we can relaunch Harry Potter and those classic movies. And also, since we are in China, the telecom operators are actively introducing 5G network. So that will bring us some more opportunities in terms of live theater, live music events, and so forth. So I think we do see some opportunities, but obviously there's challenge as well. You know, when we are going to see more blockbusters from international distributors is a very tricky question as well.
So just from a timescale point of view, when do you have a definite date when all of your cinemas will be reopened?
Well, that's a $1 million question. Unfortunately, your guess is probably as good as mine.
Probably $1 billion question, actually.
It can be tomorrow, can be, I don't know. Yeah, but I think we just want to make sure we're ready anytime. Yeah.
And just as a finishing word, you know, we've been through this pandemic. This was a market that was growing, and people were very excited about in the rest of the world. Do you feel optimistic moving forward that that progress is going to continue?
I certainly hope so. You know, last year we made the entire market made slightly around $10 billion US, about a quarter of the entire global market. That can be only translated as 1.3 times per visit, 1.3 times visit per person, which is still quite low compared to average 3, 4, 5 times in other countries. So we think there's a still growth potential there, and compared to other markets, our audience is pretty young. You know, average moviegoers here is 20-ish, and they are open to all kinds of movies, not only U.S. blockbusters, but they are quite keen to art house movies, movies from different countries as well. You probably heard about the successful stories about Indian movies in China, Lebanese movies in China, Spanish movies in China. So we are open to all different kinds of movies, which is a luck to cinema operators like us. So we do hope that the audience will come back to the cinemas after the pandemic, and we'll be able to live through this and survive and thrive.
And that's a very optimistic note on which to end. Look, we've had two parts to this discussion. I think the people around this table and cinemas in general, I think should be complimented in lots of ways at proving the adaptability of cinema, that willingness to experiment, and the speed at which partnerships were built with VOD, the speed at which new kinds of engagement and relationships with audience were built is really very impressive. It was a shock, and there's no point in pretending that everyone had strategies ready to go for a global pandemic. No one was ready for this. It was necessary to act, to be entrepreneurial, to be opportunistic, all of those things. Government has clearly played a big part, subsidy has clearly played a big part too in ensuring survival. But cinema's not about survival. Cinema has to be about that cultural growth, that economic growth. It has to be about being relevant and there all of the time. And I think again, what the concern is at the moment, and why this conversation may be different in 3 months' time, is there are still quite high levels of uncertainty. We still don't know about a second wave. We still don't know whether those audiences want to come back at the speed we need them to come back. We don't know how far the falling economy is going to have an impact on demand and on audiences. I think what we can say, and I think what's come out of this, and actually all of the other sessions in the UniFrance New Realities series, is I think that what's been proven during this period is that we belong to an industry that is willing and capable of acting quickly and adapting. And that has got to be the key takeaway right now. If we're going to survive, we're going to need all of that. And if we're going to move forward and keep that progress going, we're going to need to build on that. So the optimism, I think, is in the people and the and those relationships that have been built, and in the culture of film itself. We've just got to all put our we've all got to put our hope that that's enough. And I think at least at the end of this series, I feel like we've got a decent chance. So thanks to all of the panel, wherever you are, and thanks for those of you who are watching wherever you are. And we'll no doubt see you again soon on this same subject. So bye-bye.
Thank you.